This is Steve Jewin, aka Stevie J, for Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com. Initially, when we recorded this program, Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson were set to be the co-main event of UFC on Fox 19. However, Lyoto Machida has admitted to both UFC and USADA that he took a banned substance which he believed was allowed out of competition, which he knew he would be flagged for on a USADA test in competition, and as a result of his admission, UFC has scrapped the fight. The co-main event with Lyoto Machida and Dan Henderson is off. Needless to say, Dan Henderson is not pleased about this and tweeted the following: POS, no respect. There is no time to find a replacement opponent for Dan Henderson 3 days before the fight, so again, Lyoto Machida versus Dan Henderson is canceled. And now, here's Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
You're listening to Glove Up or Shut Up on AngryMarks.com with Peter H. and Stevie J. Find them on Twitter at HardcoreCDN and at AngryMarks. And now, for all the news, reviews, and interviews in mixed martial arts, it's time for Glove Up or Shut Up from AngryMarks.com.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Glove Up or Shut Up, right here on AngryMarks.com. My name is Peter H., and I'm joined once again by my co-host from Omaha, Nebraska, Stevie J.
Good evening, Peter. Thanks for being here for another show. We've got a very newsworthy edition, UFC in Zagreb to talk about, upcoming show with Teixeira and Evans in the main event, news all around the world. Bellator Italy has a big change to their card. There's so much to talk about tonight.
I mean, we're not going to talk this is the dawn of, or the eve of the NHL playoffs. We're not going to talk about that.
All I can say is go Wings go, but you knew I was going to say that anyway, so I figured it didn't even need to be said.
Yeah. All right, well.
And how are the Maple Leafs doing in the playoffs this year? Oh, wait.
We're not. We're 20% chance of getting Austin Matthews.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Yeah. Anyways, we have lots of news to get to. Unfortunately, the news has to start with some sad news, some very tragic news coming out of Dublin, where Portuguese fighter Joao Carvalho passed away after his fight with Charlie Ward, losing third round TKO. Here's the story. After the fight, he said he was feeling no pain or headaches, but he felt very tired. Carvalho was a teammate of Conor McGregor, and McGregor was actually cage side helping coach this fight.
Yeah, that's no good. It's a messed up situation, but he lost by TKO, and there was no way of knowing just how bad he was when he got TKO'd, but the doctors checked him over, sent him to the hospital immediately, and it just got worse from there.
It's one of those things in sports that you never really know what to say after it happens. It is a tragedy. You know,
Well, our condolences go out to his family, to
absolutely.
his friends, and to his opponent, too. I mean, Charlie Ward is just got to be devastated by this, because you want to win a fight and you want to move on and make your career a stellar career in mixed martial arts, but you don't want to be the guy responsible for somebody dying. You don't want that kind of reputation as the guy who kills people.
Someone asked me, do you think we're going to see Charlie Ward fight again? And I just said, I don't know. It depends how he deals, how he copes. If this is something that, obviously is going to stay with him for the rest of his life, but as far as his career goes after this, it's a hard thing to go through. And, his, McGregor's camp there, they lost a friend, a teammate. I mean, it's really sad to see this. And, I really fear that some opponents of mixed martial arts are going to take this as a example of why this sport is so brutal, and instead of saying it's just a tragedy.
We talked about this a little off the air, and I'll share this with the people listening to us right now. I wrote about this earlier today for the website, and I said that any sport you play is inherently risky. I mean, football players get traumatic injuries that end their careers and leave them in wheelchairs. And hockey players, they take one bad hit getting checked into the boards, they can wind up paralyzed. You know, it's risky business. Boxers get Parkinson's disease. There's no such thing as a totally safe sport. Even something you would think as a low-contact sport like baseball or basketball, people get serious, debilitating, or life-ending injuries playing those sports too. So I'm not trying to diminish this. Please understand that when I say this, we're all saddened that a fighter died in a professional mixed martial arts fight. But if you have tens of thousands of fights every year and one person dies, that's actually an aberration, because usually in an entire year, nobody dies. It's actually a very safe sport, but there's no such thing as 100% safe. There's no such thing as that when you walk outside of your house. You could get hit by a meteor. You know, you have no control over that. You can be driving to the gym and somebody can T-bone you. Life is unpredictable, but this doesn't diminish the tragedy of what happened.
Now, for those who want a timeline of events here, after the fight, you know, he was smiling, joking with his teammates backstage, and over the next little while, he got progressively worse, where they rushed him to the hospital, where he passed away in hospital. It didn't pass away in the octagon or the cage or whatever. It took a while for this, whatever happened, whether it was swelling of the brain. I mean, he was rushed to the hospital, brain surgery, you know, you put in a coma, and, you know, it's tough, you know, that's the timeline there.
And this is where we gotta say we should commend the organization at Total Extreme Fighting, because they had everything in place. They had doctors to supervise to make sure he was okay. They had emergency transport to take him to the hospital when it was clear he wasn't. And undoubtedly, they will pay all the medical bills for his family. And if they weren't planning to, I'm saying they should anyway. But my point being that it's not as though they didn't follow every protocol, because if you have sanctioned mixed martial arts professionally in North America, these are the same things you're required to have in any state in this country. You gotta have insurance and a doctor and an ambulance, and you gotta take care of all that. So clearly, Total Extreme Fighting did that as well for this show in Dublin. So I commend them for that, for being professional. And this just goes to show what I'm saying about the tragic randomness of it all, is that even with everything necessary to make sure he was taken care of, the outcome still turned out for the worse. And we talk pro wrestling every now and then on this show, and I have to say that this exact same thing happened in a Lucha Libre match that Rey Mysterio was in, where it's just freak occurrence. They had the doctor there, they had the ambulance there, they had everything ready to go, and somebody still died. It just happens sometimes.
Yeah, it's true. And accidents happen as well in the ring, in the cage, and, you know, there was a wrestler in Japan. He took a kick there, and a very famous wrestler back, 5-6 years ago.
You're talking about Misawa.
Exactly.
Yeah, it happens.
And they rushed in, and he was already gone, so.
You can have everything right, you can do everything right, and sometimes it's just going to be a bad day. And again, I feel bad that I have to keep saying this, but I don't want to diminish how traumatic this is for his family, how traumatic it is for Charlie Ward, how traumatic it is for everybody on Conor McGregor's team. We feel bad and we offer our condolences, but I don't think this should be used to condemn the sport as a whole, because you'll see just as many, if not more, tragedies in every other sport, because all sports are risky. Football players, just don't even start with that, because even at the high school level, you see people getting paralyzed for life, and that's not even getting to the pros.
All right, well, we're going to try to transition here and continue with the news. And Frank Mir has said that if his B sample isn't clean, he will retire.
He's got a whole litany of things he said. How many of them do you really want to go into right here?
I think if this comes back and it's dirty, you know, at his age, a 2-year suspension, there's no Legends division in UFC.
Right, but I'm saying if we really want to go down this rabbit hole, there's a whole bunch of things he's had to say about it, not just that he'll retire. He threw out the age-old excuse. This one I'm getting so tired of that, look at me, do I look like a guy on steroids? And that doesn't pass muster anymore because we've seen guys that look like a shambling pile of shit that were on steroids. You don't have to be cut and physically in shape to be on steroids. If guys think they're going to get an edge from it, they're going to take it whether they look jacked up or not.
Didn't Chavo Guerrero fail a drug test?
I guess if you want to go back into pro wrestling, I don't remember the specifics, but somebody probably did, and it was probably him. I don't remember.
I just remember some guy who got popped for steroids, and you look at the guy, and it's like, wait, that guy got popped for drugs?
Well, actually, the perfect example of this would be Josh Barnett, because he's never exactly looked like a rippling six-pack. I mean, he's a big guy, he's a towering guy, he's a strong guy, but he's never been cut. And yet, that guy's been popped more times perhaps than anybody in history.
Well, we'll see what happens with Frank Mir, but speaking of drug failures, we have another one from UFC Fight 985.
Okay, but wait, I wasn't quite done with Frank Mir yet.
Oh, sorry.
You moved on a little too fast. I said we were going down the rabbit hole here.
Oh, I thought you meant rabbit hole as far as drug failures.
No, I meant as far as Frank Mir's excuses for this, because
oh no,
he offered another. Oh, this is a gem, Peter. You're gonna love this. He said, "It's an IQ test. I'm not that stupid. I got tested 4 weeks out from the fight and I passed. Why would I fail a test the day of, knowing I'd be tested again?"
Oh.
So
that hurts the brain.
I know, he's used the two most cliche excuses in mixed martial arts. The, do I look like I'm on steroids excuse, and the, do I look that stupid excuse. He covered both bases.
I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying.
I will grant that Frank Mir is not a stupid person. I've heard his analysis on commentary for fights, and if anything, he might be overly intellectual. He can break down things to a microscopic level that it almost gets annoying, but he knows what he's talking about, and he is a very smart, very educated fighter. That doesn't mean you can't screw up and get caught on a test. It just means he thinks he's so smart he thought he could get around the test, and obviously the test did not get around him.
Well, last time I checked, John Jones has an IQ, a very high IQ, and he still got popped, so.
He got popped for any number of things, including cocaine. You wouldn't think a smart person would take cocaine, but then you also wouldn't think a smart person would get behind the wheel drunk, and he did both of those things.
Or behind the wheel without a license.
Yeah, well, at least he has a driver now. That's all I can say about that.
Oh, you got a new job. Congratulations.
Yeah, you're a nutritionist and you're a driver. Congratulations.
Go pay raise, though.
You would hope.
Alright, so we should talk about Vizcari Andrade failing a drug, got popped by USADA, was informed that, there's a potential drug failure here from UFC Fight 985.
I love how that's become the new lingo, by the way. That every time something comes up now, it's that you were notified by USADA of a potential failure. It's never, quote unquote, you failed for a drug test anymore. It's always you were notified by USADA of.
This is what I have a problem with. Okay, first of all, Andrade won by unanimous decision over Richard Walsh. That result now could be in question. That's fine. My problem is this was taken. It wasn't a post-fight drug test, Stevie. This was a pre-fight sample taken March 7th. And 12 days before the show.
Well, okay, we had the same problem with the test that John Jones failed for. It was taken before he had the fight, and they didn't get the results back until the fight was done, which some people questioned that. Some people said they held back the results. But I don't really think it works that way with this testing. I think these labs get so far behind that they can't crank out the results fast enough for all the fighters they test.
If this sample was taken March 7th, which it was, March 7th in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, it shouldn't take more than a month to announce the results. For a pre-fight sample, I'm not talking samples that were taken the day of the fight, because you're testing all the fighters there, and that's where the backlog comes from. This was taken in a Brazil USADA drug lab. It shouldn't take more than a month to get these results out.
except they might also have a backlog of Olympic athletes trying to get ready for the 2016 Olympics. You don't know how many things they're testing at the time. You have no way of knowing.
Yeah, it's true. The Rio Olympics are coming up, and there's a whole slew of issues. We'll just say that with the Rio Olympics. But I always look forward to the Rio Olympic wrestling tournament because you never know who might show up at UFC or Bellator one day.
Well, yeah. In fact, the Olympic trials just took place in the U.S., and Aaron Pico, the guy they were touting so highly in Bellator that they signed him before he even had his first fight, didn't qualify for the Olympics. He's an alternate, but he came up short, so we'll see if he ends up in the Olympics or not. But I do know that Jordan Burroughs made the team.
Now, the thing about Pico is that he, how do I say this? He lost his fight, however, he will be an alternate on the team if the team qualifies. Something about there's a qualification tournament, there's 2 qualification tournaments coming up.
Right.
And if the U.S. advances in those tournaments and qualifies to have the alternate on the team, he can still be at the Olympics. So the door is not completely closed, it's just closed halfway right now.
Right, that's why I said he's an alternate. He could still theoretically make the team. He just didn't make the team outright. He lost the match that would have put him on the team.
Which, I mean, it was a tough fight. It was down to the wire, very close, but Pico didn't make it.
Well, one of the funnier things is one of his earlier matches was a complete reversal of fortune. You couldn't have written a better story in pro wrestling because he got down 9-0 very early in the match and then came back. Now keep in mind, 10 points is a technical fall in amateur wrestling. If you get up by 10 points, it's over. So he was on the verge of elimination at 9-0, and he came back and won 20-9. He scored the technical fall on his opponent and ended the match after being down 9-0.
That's a script right there.
Exactly. You got to go out of your way to see this. Find a video of it if you can, because it's amazing.
All right. Well, speaking of amazing, there's a fighter coming back. Some people said he'd never fight again. He was retired, and he's back. BJ Penn versus Dennis Seaver has been added to UFC 199 on June the 4th in LA.
Now, we should add that UFC had to issue a statement about this because, as you recall, Peter, they were investigating an alleged assault by BJ Penn, and this is what they said about that investigation. We have taken a look at the available facts, which aren't too substantial, and there are 2 stories of what happened. To date, there has been no action at all taken by the law enforcement agency in question. We decided to allow BJ to fight. However, we are going to continue to monitor the situation. If new information and more information becomes available to us, we reserve the right to reevaluate. So, he's on the card because they can't prove he did anything wrong, but if it comes to light that he did, they'll yank him.
So the proof there was no corroborating story. It's sort of like we use a hockey example. Patrick Kane was accused of sexual assault. The story from the accuser kept changing, and the district attorney was like, we can't take this to trial.
Yeah, it was the old he said, she said, and unfortunately there's just not enough proof on what she said. That doesn't mean in either case that she's lying. That just means they can't prove it.
Which, I'm going to use Patrick Kane just an example here. He actually made history. Did you know about that, Stevie, at the end of the regular season this year?
Well, do tell our listeners all about it.
The NHL has been around for 99 years now, and this year we'll have the first American-born Art Ross Trophy winner for most points.
Well, congratulations, then. That's a hell of an accomplishment.
And no, he does not play for the Detroit Red Wings.
Well, no, I would be a little more intimately aware of his details if he did.
All right, so BJ Penn, Dennis Seaver. I mean, it's a fight. It's probably it's not a tomato can fight, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, they're both going to give it their all. I mean, Penn, I said before I don't want to see him back fighting, but if he's going to be back, it's a quality fight for him. You know, he gets a guy who's not at the top of any ranking by any stretch of the imagination, but if Penn wins, it gives him relevance again.
What's your reaction going to be when you hear BJ Penn's entrance music hit again?
Well, I'll be happy. I mean, I like the Israel Kamekaweli, however you say that name, song. It's a fun song, and it's actually two separate songs by Brutta Is that are mixed together. So it's like one's called Hawaii 78, and I forget what the other's called, but it's a great song. I get chills when I hear it because I'm such a, admittedly a fan of BJ Penn. I saw him successfully defend the lightweight title, and I even got a chance to tell him that when I met him. So the guy to me is a legend in the sport, but because he's a legend in the sport, I also feel like his time has come and gone, and I'm not really that excited about seeing him fight again after the beating that he took from Frankie Edgar. I kind of thought that was it. He should retire, and I was happy when he did. So I guess I'm mixed emotions on this. I mean, I know he wants to fight. I know he feels like he still can fight, but he didn't show us that in his last fight. So,
No, he did not.
So I guess how many times does he need to have it proven to himself that he can't do it anymore? I mean, he said last time he needed to find out, and he found out, and now apparently he didn't find out. It's like the old Jens Pulver thing we always talk about. Like, how many times does Jens Pulver need it proven that he's not Jens Pulver anymore?
It's true. Sometimes the itch to come back is too great.
I mean, you can't ever tell a fighter to retire. It's their life. It's their choice. But you can always have the come to Jesus meeting like Dana White had with Chuck Liddell. Like, dude, maybe you should do something else.
Yeah, we'll put you in the front office or something.
Indeed.
All right, so Chris Weidman has said that his next fight after his rematch will be in New York.
Well, I thought his rematch would be in New York, but I'm not surprised that he's taking his next fight after that either way. I mean, it is his home, win or lose. If he has the title, he'll love to defend it there, and if he doesn't, then he'll still be on the comeback trail looking to bounce back.
And no, he's not overlooking his opponent. This fight coming up, pretty huge.
Yeah, I don't think you could overlook Luke Rockhold. I mean, the way he dismantled Chris Weidman, I've never seen anybody do that to Weidman ever. It was a masterful performance on Luke Rockhold's part. It exonerated him for all the critics who said he was only good in Strikeforce. How's he going to do against UFC? And he proved the point. He went out there and dissected him.
Now we move on to UFC canceling the tryouts for Ultimate Fighter 24 for basically that was for the featherweight title, that whole gimmick we talked about last week. No news right now if filming will be pushed back. This is really weird here. There's no current fighters will be coaches. However, the coaches will be quote world-class coaches, guest coaches, and former opponents of the champion.
Yeah, that is a little strange, to be honest. I don't know what to make of it, or what I even make of the fact that they canceled the tryouts. It's kind of bizarre, and they didn't offer any further explanation. I just got a drop in my email that said, tryouts have been canceled. We apologize to the inconvenience for fighters who were planning to attend. And that was all they said.
Could they not have had the venue booked, or maybe the venue got canceled? Could they not have moved it to a UFC gym, perhaps?
I feel like there's something deeper to it than that, and that's only my gut instinct, and I have no proof. I just feel like maybe they decided that this whole idea of crowning a number one contender from a bunch of never-ands and never-weres was not going to pan out very well, because whether it was Cejudo or DJ that was the champ at the time, they'd probably just destroy whatever guy came out of that show, but I could be wrong.
Well, we've been wrong before on this show.
That we have.
Alright, so UFC Fox 19 coming up this weekend. There is a very interesting news note here as Daryl Horcher, former Bellator fighter, is stepping in on short notice to fight Khabib Nurmagomedov, and it's a catchweight at 160.
That's absolutely correct, and that's only fair to him since he's taken the fight on very short notice, and Khabib, for his part, has said, if I lose this fight to Horcher, I lose everything. Like, he's taking this ultra seriously. Like, this guy taking this fight on short notice isn't going to come in and get one over on me, considering where I am and what I'm at in life. So he's not looking past Horscher in any way.
If you remember Horcher from Bellator, he was 13-1.
Yeah, it's not like he's a scrub. It's
God,
just,
no.
It's just, A, he's taking it on short notice, and B, Habib is Habib. This guy used to wrestle bears.
I love how you always bring that up when we talk about it.
It's the most fascinating and or hilarious fact about any fighter ever. I mean, how many MMA fighters have you ever said that about? Like, yeah, in his training days in Russia, he used to wrestle bears. You don't really say that about people.
You think they're full of crap, then you see him in person, like, I believe it.
No, I mean, there's video of it, too. There's actual evidence that this happened.
Alright, so, as I said, 13-1 former Bellator fighter making his UFC debut on short notice. I mean, is this the definition of playing with house money here, if you're Horcher?
I'm sure they gave him a nice fat check to do this. They're like, dude, do us a solid, take this at a catch weight, we'll make your life. You know, they tend to treat guys very good who do them favors.
Now, stop me if you've heard this before, but both Chuck Liddell and Forrest Griffin will be coaching the season of The Ultimate Fighter.
Well, it's Ultimate Fighter Latin America, and it's the third season of that show.
But it's some big gets there for coaches. I mean, like, I'm almost curious to get this just to see the season. I'm sure I'll have to refer to the subtitles, but...
Yeah, it'll be available on UFC Fight Pass. I mean, they put Ultimate Fighter Brazil up there. I watched the whole season of that on Fight Pass.
Alright,
now, aren't we going to talk about another late replacement on short notice?
Yeah, we're going to get to Bellator in a second.
Alright, I figured you'd segue from one to the other, but if you got something else to talk about first, we'll do that.
Site Miocic has said he would fight JDS again, and you remember the last time Miocic fought JDS?
Yeah, it was a rather violent, one-sided affair, as I recall.
Yeah, I think I would take that fight again. Well, no kidding.
No shit, Sherlock, but since you brought up JDS, is that our segue to talk about Zagreb, or do we want to get into the rest of the news?
No, we'll talk more of the news. Bellator 152 this weekend in Italy. The main event has been changed as Patricky Pitbull Ferrari is now fighting former UFC fighter Kevin Souza, as Derek Campos has been replaced due to injury. My notes have it as an undisclosed injury. You might have something different.
Nope. As I put it in my article, that fight is on ice along with whatever undisclosed injury he might have. Now, the thing that's more
sometimes
interesting,
they don't.
More interesting fact about this is that Kevin Souza fought in UFC as a featherweight, so he's taking the fight on short notice coming up to lightweight, which I actually like. That makes sense. Like, if they're going to get replacement fighters for fights, they should do that more often. Like, they should find a guy in the weight class down, and then instead of having them fight at a catch weight, just be like, yeah, just come up and wait to the next class. You'll be fine.
Maybe his walk-around weight is something comparable, though.
It could be. I honestly don't know what his walk-around weight would be. I mean, he's featherweight, so that could be anywhere from 160 to 185. You don't know with featherweights.
The problem I have here is, was he already in Italy, or is he flying in jet lag, you know what I mean, training quickly, I guess, in a different climate? Do you think that will have any difference in the fight?
I think he knows exactly what he's getting into, just like Horscher knows what he's getting into. He wouldn't have taken it if he didn't think he could handle the travel and still make the weight.
Fair enough. Alright, let's see. Speaking of pitbulls, Patricio Pitbull is fighting Henry Corrales at Bellator 153.
Yeah, that's a change of opponent as well. He was originally scheduled to face John Teixeira, but that fell apart. I think it's the same reason, due to an injury, so 2 new opponents for both of the Pitbull brothers.
Alright, let's see, what else do I have here? Oh! Derek Lewis wants to fight Roy Nelson at UFC 200.
Yeah, he wants to have a slobber knocker, because that's kind of what Derek Lewis is known for, is being a big punching mofo who knocks people out, so he wants to go in there and mix it up with big country, because that's what he's known for.
Alright, so, let's see, you want to go back to, talking about, was it the Ultimate Fighter, or do you want to go straight to, Croatia?
Yeah, let's go to Croatia. Let's go to Zagreb.
Alright, so UFC Fight Night 86 in Croatia. The main event, Ben Rothwell against JDS Junior Dos Santos. And JDS wins.
Yeah.
Decisively.
You know, the only round that I had any question about was the first round. I thought Rothwell did okay in that round. I wouldn't say he definitively won it, but I could have at least seen an argument for it where if one judge had given him the round, I would have been okay with that. But nope, he didn't get that first round, and he definitely didn't get any of the rest because, as JDS said in his post-fight interview, I took this fight like a boxing fight. Hey, I'm a boxer. I did my boxing. And that's exactly what he did to Ben Rothwell. For 5 rounds, he just circled around him, throwing jabs and hooks and body shots, and Ben Rothwell never really seemed to have any answer for it.
So once again, JDS is in the heavyweight title picture.
Yeah, that puts him right back in the mix because they were both top 5 fighters before this fight, and JDS is former champion, so beating a guy that's that highly ranked when you're a former champion yourself, you're a contender again. There's no question. It's no doubt.
Aforementioned Derek Lewis knocked out Gabriel Gonzaga at 4:48 of round 1.
Really, all Gonzaga could do in this fight was get takedowns and hope that a submission would open up, but every time he did, Derek Lewis found a way to get back to his feet, and you just had this feeling every time he did that sooner or later he was going to put one on the button and rock Gonzaga's world. And 12 seconds before the end of the first round, he finally got that right in, and you could see Gonzaga reeling backwards, and once Derek Lewis had him hurt, he just poured it on.
You think some fighters have like an internal clock, like they know when it's 30 seconds left in the round?
I'm sure some do, but I don't think this would have mattered if he'd hit him with it at 2:48 or 4:48. I think once he hit that one punch, he knew he landed it clean because he could see Gonzaga start to wobble and stumble and fall backwards, and that's a cue for any fighter to just pour it on. Once you see those legs go, you know it's time to score.
All right, you want to talk about the next 2 fights here?
Yeah, I'll talk about one of them more than the other. That's Francis Ngannou and Curtis Blades. Blades was a late replacement for Bojan Milosevic and didn't really have much of a chance in this fight. He was getting outgunned for both rounds. He had one eye swollen shut. It was like the JDS Rothwell fight in a sense, except on a less technical, less skilled level, and I'm not trying to knock Ngannou by saying that, but he's not Junior Dos Santos, and I don't think it's an insult to say that. I'm just saying he did on a smaller level scale, even though they're both heavyweights, so it's not really smaller, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's like the same kind of performance with the same level of dominance, and Blades' right eye was swollen up to the point they were like, nope, you're not coming back out here for the 3rd round. You can't see.
At what point, like, do you get pissed off at the doctors, or are you like, just hang your head and like, okay, I gave it a shot?
Well, he wanted to keep fighting. He tried to keep fighting, and they were having a little bit of a discussion about it, and it was pretty evident watching the fight that he shouldn't be allowed to continue, so it really doesn't matter what he thinks. There was no way he could intelligently defend himself not seeing half of the things coming at him.
All right, let's move on to Johnson and Tybura.
Yeah, I have absolutely nothing to say about this fight, and I have a damn good reason for it. You want to know what that is?
You fell asleep?
No, I was interviewing Darren Cruikshank.
Oh, there you go.
The Detroit superstar wanted to talk about his fight at Rising Fighting Federation this weekend, so I took the opportunity and had a nice little chat with him, and I missed this entire fight.
Now, is this interview available online?
Yes, indeed. YouTube.com/AngryMarks.com. And the write-up of it will be on MMA Mania any day now before the fight takes place because he's got a very interesting opponent. He's facing Shinji Sasaki. They are both 16-8. The difference being Sasaki has 3 draws on his record.
That's a great wrestling name, Shinji Sasaki. I like it.
That's kind of what I thought, too. I was like, that guy could be in New Japan.
Absolutely. For the record, Timothy Johnson beating Marcin Tybura. Unanimous decision, 2 rounds to 1 across the board.
Indeed. And then we go to the Jan Blachowicz fight, fighting Igor Puchaik. And this was a unanimous decision across the board. But in that first round, Grike, he had a chance there. He put a few good shots on Blachowicz, and he was hurting for a little bit.
I always say never leave it to the judges. And if you base on the first round, you know what I mean? Like, don't stop when round two. Like, keep your foot in that gas pedal.
Well,
you might not have won that round. It's a close round. But let's go out in round two and let's kick some butt.
You know what? Even if he wanted to keep his foot on the gas pedal, Blachowicz put on the brakes because every time Grike would get something going, he would just double leg him to the ground and work him over on the ground. So you got to give credit where credit's due for an effective strategy. It wasn't maybe the most exciting fight in the world, but it worked.
And we had a women's strawweight fight to wrap up the main card.
Yep, Marina Moroz defeated newcomer Christina Stanchow 30-27 across the board, which to my mind pretty much says it all because Moroz was clearly the better fighter in every single round, no doubt.
And on the prelims, we had a decision, a submission, a TKO, and another submission.
I think the most impressive one out of the FS1 fights would be Merabak Taisimov. That was a devastating display, and maybe that's because Damir Hashevic wasn't a top caliber opponent, like somebody that would regularly be in UFC, and this guy got on the card because it was in Croatia. But you can't take that away from an impressive performance, whether you do it against a name guy or a new guy. A TKO is a TKO, and Merabak really rang his bell.
He definitely did. Zach Cummings beat Nicholas Dalby. That was the unanimous decision. Perez beat Entwistle via submission punches at 4:04 of the first round, and Damian Stasiak beating Filip Bijic by a submission at rear naked choke at 2:16 of round one.
That is it. And I didn't see Fight Pass, so if you want to talk about it, that's you. If not, we move on.
All right, Lucas Martins beat Robert Whiteford with a split decision, 30-27, 29-28, and 28-29. So, yeah, I don't know about that.
You don't think the judges got it right on that one? You disagree with the scores?
I agree with it, but when you see one judge giving it 2 rounds to 1 for the guy who loses, and one judge going all 3 rounds, something's up there.
Well, you and I have had this discussion so many times, but I think a 10-9 can be a lot closer in either respect than it actually looks on paper when you add it up.
So, I mean, we've seen judges like that before. It's gonna happen time and time again. It's just, I've gotten to the point now where I see that score, Stevie, and it's like, okay, what fight was this guy watching? Let's move on.
Yeah, and then there are some fights where the rounds are so close and so even that if you scored 1 all 3 for one fighter and 1 all 3 for the other, I wouldn't have a problem with it because if it's that close, it's that close.
As far as the Fight Pass, the other ones, Jared Kanner beating Cyril Asker with a knockout punch on elbows, 2:44 round 1, and Bojan Velkovic beating Alessio Di Tiro, unanimous decision. There you go.
There you go. So without further ado, I assume we're moving on to Fight Night with your favorite inactive fighter, Rashad Evans.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, as far as my favorite active one, you're going to say Ben Askren, aren't you?
Yeah, that's kind of the old joke around here, isn't it?
Alright, let's talk about the prelims, and there's an interesting name, 2 interesting names on this, 2 interesting fights, I should say, that catch my eye on the Fight Pass portion. Drew Dober against Islam Makhachev, which, that's a great fight there. And John Dodson is on the prelim Fight Pass against Manny the Anvil Gamburian.
Well, I assume they're viewing that as basically a tune-up fight, something that's doesn't necessarily need to be on the main card, but you know what? Let's just go ahead and give you the odds for that fight to see if the bookmakers agree, because they have this one as minus 525 for Dodson and plus 415 for Gamburian, so they kind of agree. It's a tune-up fight for Dodson.
Now, what are the odds Manny's shoulder pops out of place?
Yeah, they don't have a separate line for that, but it'd probably be pretty high.
Drew Dober, though, that's a great fight for prelim for hardcore fans.
Well, yeah, and it's one of the more even fights that you'll find in this. Not the most even, but it's within striking distance of being a coin flip because Makhachev is minus 185, and Dober is plus 155.
All right, so let's talk about the Fox prelim fights here, and once again, more big names on prelims, which I know this is why you watch the prelims. They're trying to have people, as you said before, have a tune-up before the next big fight. But Cub Swanson, Hakron Diaz, Court McGee, Santiago Ponzinibbio, Betch Correa against Raquel Pennington, and Beneil Dariush against Michael Chiesa.
Yes. And let me once again run down the odds for you listening and checking us out on YouTube or anywhere else. It is minus 125 for Cub Swanson, plus 105 for Hakron Diaz. So that one is your definition of a coin flip right there. It's almost dead even. Slight favorite for Ponzinibbio here, coming in at minus 155. Court McGee plus 125 as the dog. Betch Correa and Raquel Pennington is fairly close, but Pennington is still the favorite at minus 170, plus 150 on the comeback for Betch. And one of my upset picks for this card, Beneil Dariush is minus 160, and Michael Chiesa is plus 140. I'm going with Chiesa on this.
You're hoping in guillotine, aren't you?
I don't know if it'll be a guillotine, but I expect a strong performance from Chiesa. I think he's the guy that's got more going for him right now. Basically, you look at his recent record, and he's got 2 wins in a row, and Mitch Clark was a tough fighter, a respectable fight. Jim Miller was a legend of the lightweight division, and you thought maybe he wasn't past his prime, and I thought he was, but if we make the argument that he wasn't, that's a quality win for Chiesa. And Beneil Dariush, well, this guy is definitely a prospect. He's won his last 5 in a row, but every now and again, when you get on a roll like that, somebody stops your momentum, and I feel like Chiesa could be that guy.
I'm going to go with Swanson, McGee, Pennington, and Chiesa.
Okay, well, like I said, my upset pick is Chiesa, so I'm going with Pennington, Ponzinibbio, and Swanson on the other 3.
All right. Main card, Rose Namajunas against Tisha Torres. Wow. Yeah.
This is a high-quality fight for that division, for the strawweight women's division.
What are the odds on this one? Because I really don't know who to pick on this one.
Well, before I give you the odds, let me give you the rankings, since I think that's crucial to knowing why this fight matters. Rose is number 3, and Tisha Torres is number 4, so we're looking at potentially a challenger for Joanna Champion, or if she were to lose anytime in the next, 6 months to a year, then whoever the new champion is would be facing the winner of this fight. So, with that being said, the line for this fight, minus 225 for Rose, plus 185 for Torres. So, even though the rankings would have you believe that Tisha Torres is right there with Rose, the bookmakers say that Rose is substantially ahead of her. Not way, way, way ahead of her. Not a blowout, but they believe Rose has this in the bag.
Yeah, I think Rose wins this, but Torres, oh man, her skill set, damn. Exactly. Don't take her lightly.
No, going back all the way to Invicta, Tisha Torres is a tornado of terror you don't want to take for granted. She is undefeated for a reason, and in fact holds a win over Rose from a show that I went to in Kansas City. So, you got to just think, at this point, they're rating Rose's progression as having gone faster than her opponents. So that would be my take on it as well, is that Rose has gotten better faster than Tisha, and Tisha has plateaued. That's what they're saying right
now. Well, this will definitely be a test then. Let's move on to that catchweight fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov against Darrell Horcher. I'm going Nurmagomedov just because I want to see him win to keep his place or maybe challenge for the title. I think Horcher with a full fight camp, I might lean towards him a little bit more than I would here in this fight.
Yes. And the reason you heard me draw a big breath and sigh a little bit is because Horscher really doesn't have a chance here with short notice.
I wouldn't say a chance, but
I mean, yeah, there's like the Holly Holm upset special here if you really want to go that route. I mean, he has that kind of chance, but Habib Nurmagomedov is minus 1,050. That tells you what they think of this fight. They think that he's going to go out there and smoke Horscher like kielbasa. So, plus 550 for Daryl if you really, really, really want to put that money on the Holly Holm upset for the night. You can go for it, but I don't think it's going to pay.
You just want to talk about your grill, don't you?
I love to grill. What can I say? Insert cliche about red-blooded meat-eating Americans. America, fuck yeah.
Oh man, there's so many jokes I could do there, but let's just move on.
Indeed. We'll move on to Dan Henderson and Lyoto Machida. And you know what? If this was a loser leaves town match, I'd probably be okay with that because both of these guys have had legendary careers. There's probably not any chance in hell either one of them is getting back to the title at this point. So, you know what? Let's see if somebody just calls it a night after this fight. And the odds right now have Machida as the favorite, minus 355, Dan Henderson plus 295. And if you look at their record in recent fights, I think that's a pretty respectable line because Dan Henderson, well, he's lost 3 of his last 4, won 2 out of his last 8, I think. So he's not on the winning side of a lot of fights. And Machida, again, he's not the champion anymore. He hasn't been for a while. But overall, you know what? It's a little bit better. It's not a lot better, but it's a little better. He's only won 1 of his last 3, but he's won 3 of his last 6 and like 5 of his last 10, 6 of his last 10, something like that. So I feel like Machida's just got a little bit more in the tank, and Dan Henderson, with respect to the legend that he is, 2-time Pride champion, former Strikeforce champion, all the things that he's accomplished, let's just be perfectly real about the single stat that matters the most. He's 45. And Vitor Belfort, a guy who we all thought off the juice wasn't going to be that great, still went out there and smoked him because he's 45.
45, I mean, I'm not saying battle of the ages, but boy, oh boy, I mean,
well,
what do you do with
not
Machida?
That old. He's 37, so by comparison, he's a young buck.
Yeah, but what do you do? What do you do with the winner of this fight? I mean, real talk here. Like, what do you do here?
Well, that's why I made the argument that the loser might want to consider retirement. I mean, it's not even a fight it's not going to make either man's career if they win because you look at the rankings right now, Machida is number 5 and Dan Henderson is number 14. So if Machida beats him, he doesn't really gain a lot. That doesn't springboard him to a title shot. And if Henderson wins, he's still got the entire pack ahead of him. The guys like Tim Kennedy, Hagar Masasi, Anderson Silva. He's still got a whole laundry list of guys he would have to beat to be relevant. Just beating Machida alone won't do it for him, and time is not on his side.
It's not the fighters from before. I mean, it's
right. This is a good matchup for each of them at this point, but neither one of these guys. I mean, the only guy I can see who has more longevity coming out of this fight is Machida, and not just because of the age difference, but because of the style difference. Because Dan Henderson, we know he has that H-bomb, and he relies on it. If he hits it, you go out, and if he doesn't, he's probably going out. Whereas Machida is the more calculated fighter. He's the guy who will hang back, he'll strike from weird angles, he'll throw a lot of kicks. He's got an unorthodox pause and rush kind of style where you won't see it coming, and when it does, he'll take your head off. So I feel like Machida's strategy in fights pays more dividends than Henderson's does at this point.
And before the main event for this show, I just got a message from Twitter of all places. Just for those UFC video game fans, 2 new fighters have been added to EA UFC 2. Louis Samoka and Patrick Cote.
Now, you know there's a secret fighter in EA UFC 2.
Bruce Lee.
No, that's not the secret fighter.
CM Punk.
That's not the secret fighter.
Stevie J.
No. I'll give you a hint.
What's that?
To unlock this fighter, you have to use the old Konami code, or as some people call it, the Contra code. The one that Xavier Woods gets the name of his YouTube channel from, that starts with up, up, down, down.
Down, down, left, right, ABAs. I know this.
You should know who it is. Do you remember? He's in CM Punk's weight class, if that's any help for you.
No, it doesn't.
I'll tell you. The secret fighter in EA UFC 2 is, drumroll please, Joe Rogan.
Shut up.
I'm dead serious. Joe Rogan is the secret fighter.
Oh, man. So fighters now, if they have a disagreement, they can just go to their video game console and beat some sense into Rogan?
I guess so. You know, I heard Mike Sempervive say something absolutely hilarious about this that I had never even considered before, about fighters having disagreements with other fighters. He said, you might as well lay it down on him. What's he going to do? Punch you in the face? He was going to do that anyway. Like, wow, that's a perfect reason for Conor McGregor to talk smack to every opponent ever, because the worst thing he can do is hit you, and he was already going to do that.
Well, I might pick up this game sooner rather than later, but Joe Rogan, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a fan of Joe, that's definitely cool, and if you want to see Joe get his ass beat, I guess that's also cool.
Alright, let's talk about the main event, Glover Teixeira against Rashad Evans.
Yes, indeed, and this one has a lot of implications for the division, and I know I made reference earlier in the show to the fact that you don't like Rashad Evans' inactivity over recent years, but I think his current status in the ratings does somewhat reflect that. He's only number 7 in the division. He's actually behind Ovince St. Preux, who is challenging John Jones for the interim light heavyweight title. So, this is a fair chance for him to prove his relevance by getting a quality win, if he can. And I say if he can, because Glover Teixeira is number 4 in the division right now. And when you look at their respective records, we have already noted Rashad Evans' inactivity. But aside from that, it's a mixed bag over his last 5 fights, because he lost to John Jones, he lost to Rogerio Nogueira, he lost to Ryan Bader by decision, and the 2 guys that he beat, Chael Sonnen, well, I think that answers that own question. Great commentator, mixed record as a fighter, came close with Anderson Silva a couple of times, but, you know, it is what it is. And Dan Henderson, we've also noted that Dan isn't what he used to be, so, yeah, I don't know how much you really want to give Rashad Evans for those 2 wins out of those 5 fights, because it seems to me that those are 2 beatable guys. Again, not disrespecting them, just stating facts here. So, you look at Glover Teixeira's record over his last 5 fights, and he's lost 2 and won 3, but the 2 that he lost, Phil Davis and John Jones, very top of the division guys, so no disrespect in either of those, and the 3 wins are all what I consider to be quality wins. Ryan Bader, Ovince St. Preux, who we just talked about, and Patrick Cummins. So I think there's some momentum in Glover, especially since he's won 2 in a row against 2 caliber guys, and Rashad Evans, we don't know with all his injuries and the fact that he spends more time doing commentary on UFC panels than he does fighting these days. I feel like Teixeira can go out there and clock him and rock him and sock him, and the odds makers apparently do as well, because he is minus 220 and Rashad is plus 180.
So, who do you got, CD? I know who I got.
I'm going with Glover.
Yeah, I'm going Glover too. I don't think this fight lasts long. I'm going to say it ends in the first round.
You know what? I give Rashad more of a chance than that because he is a former champion. He is an outstanding wrestler. Always has been, going back to his collegiate days. I can see at least one round of this fight where Rashad takes him down, controls him on the ground, but I think he gets tired at some point because it is a 5-round fight, and if it goes later, I think Glover Teixeira will be the fresher man, and we know that he is a dangerous striker. I mean, we're talking about a guy that used to train with Chuck Liddell, and Chuck Liddell did not like getting hit by him, and Chuck Liddell is one of the most feared strikers ever in the light heavyweight division. So that tells you a little something about the power that Glover Teixeira packs.
Stevie, what fighter in the history of mixed martial arts likes getting hit by Chuck Liddell?
What fighter in the history of light heavyweight and UFC likes getting hit by either of them?
Yeah, these guys pack a punch, so there's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that pit training that they do is something else.
Oh, that's just... Oh, I don't know, Rashad taking that long break, I mean, I think he should stay retired. Or, not retired, but... you know what I mean.
You're proposing retirement, I think, is what you're trying to say. It's like, if you're going to be inactive for that long, maybe you should stay inactive is what you're trying to say. Because from 2013 to 2016, he had one fight, the aforementioned Bader, and he lost.
All right, let's move on to Bellator 152. And, okay, so...
Not really that much to say about it. We previewed it last week.
We did. Bellator 152 airs on Saturday on Spike, while the debut of the Kickboxing Torino show will air Friday, April 22nd, after Bellator 153.
Right. They're both being taped at the same time. One airs on tape delay this weekend, and one airs on tape a week later.
So yeah, we talked about the show last week, really, but just for record's sake, let's talk about the fight that got changed. Pitbull Freire against Kevin Souza.
That's right. And Souza, like I said earlier in the show, he is a quality opponent coming in, a former UFC fighter, featherweight in the division. Honestly, when I heard this announcement, the first thing that came to mind was I heard John Anik saying, Kevin Souza, blah, 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 that John Anik rhythm, that when he gets excited about a fighter, because Kevin Souza always seemed to be fighting in Brazil, and John Anik just always seems to call those shows. So it was his voice I heard in my head when I heard this announcement, and he had quite a record there for a while. I mean, he was like 10 straight fights in a row until he got submitted by Chaz Skelly. And that was kind of surprising to me, was that he was eliminated from UFC off one loss. I would have thought he'd last longer in UFC, but I guess they decided the featherweight division was so crowded that if you get choked out by Chaz Skelly, that's it for you. So he got cut, and now he's in Bellator.
Well, that's all the news really we have this week. All the shows will be previewed, and I'm sure we got more shows next week.
Indeed.
So much for having a slow news week when it comes to MMA, because I know we got more cards on the way this month, including, just off the top of my head, we got Benson Henderson's debut in Bellator this month.
That's right, and I talked to Andrei Koreshkov about that debut, so another thing you can look forward to on MMAmania.com is my interview with the Bellator welterweight champion, Andrei Koreshkov.
And we already talked about youtube.com/AngryMarks.com.
That's right, and since we're throwing out cheap plugs, at Hardcore CDN. Everybody should be following Peter right now for all the latest news in MMA and live retweets. Whenever we have a new show, he'll put it up.
Absolutely. And Stevie's at Angry Marks.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, for Stevie J, I'm Peter H, the Hardcore Canadian. Thanks for listening. And as I always say, never leave it to the judges. Good night, everybody.
See ya.